Psychologists say that it takes just 21 days to embed a new behavioral pattern. So what has 2 years of lockdown and working from home done to our priorities? I'm Dion Chang, and I'm going to look at the life audit of what the pandemic has done and how it's shifted our priorities, specifically our relationship to our families, but more importantly, our relationship to work. When people tragically lost loved ones during the pandemic, or they got really ill from COVID, people started to reassess what their lives were. Spending time with family at home also contributed to this reassessment. We're starting to see trends that have emerged because of this life audit. Lifestyle trends like semigration, so lots of families moving to second-tier cities, to coastal cities, to bigger properties just for more space. And also you've got trends like revenge travel. You only live once, so book that airline and just travel the world. So it's these little life assessments that are starting to take seed and start to grow within people. And you're starting to see a big pushback in terms of work culture and what they're calling the hustle culture that we had before the pandemic. So if there are lifestyle trends, the work trends that are coming up are perhaps a bit more disturbing for business owners. You get to hear about the Great Resignation, the anti-ambition movement, the anti-work movement, and the one that everybody's talking about now is quiet quitting. But fundamentally, it's not just about not wanting to work, but I think more specifically is wanting to work differently. And I think this is what a lot of business owners miss, is not that it's just, people are slacking off. And one business owner put it perfectly and said, these are not slackers or deserters in terms of coming back to work. These are prodigal sons and daughters who are returning back to your business. But it's a very different environment. And the different environment is shown completely in international labor law. They're actually supporting this workforce revolution. There's the right to disconnect, the right to remote work, and these are being implemented in different countries around the world as law that you cannot move. In the Netherlands, a really interesting one is that asking your employees to keep their webcams on, because we have digital monitoring tools at the moment, is an infringement of human rights. It's gone that far. And this is not going to stop. We are at the tip of an iceberg of, and I don't say this lightly, a workforce revolution. And if you think that the pushback is disruptive at the moment, just wait until the next 12 months start to unfold. Again, it is a golden opportunity to reshape that company culture, the business culture, and the trajectory of where you want your workers to do. So the big debate at the moment is really about a hybrid workforce. So which teams come in 3 days a week? Is it 2 days a week? What is the remote working policy? So people are fixated on this hybrid form of work, but they miss a very important point. There's been a global survey, and they looked at workforces that were in office all the time, 5 days a week, and they also looked at workforces that had a remote working policy. Surprisingly, what they found that both parties were either the most stressed workers or the least stressed workers. And what that really said was, it's not so much the location that is a problem, it is the flexibility of being human. So we're fixating on location, whereas we should be fixating on the flexibility of human nature. If you look at traditional corporate culture pre-pandemic, it was location-centric mindset. You come into the large head office, and this is where you work 9 to 5, and this is how we manage people. If you look post-pandemic, it is much more about a human-centric way of looking at managing a business. This is really difficult because the ideas of productivity have also switched. We're starting to see a big global shift to people being more freelancers. So it's not just, I'm going to be a gig worker, but it is stopping paid for work that is monitored by certain times and certain areas into that office, into more time-based or output-based results. So tell me what you want, tell me when you want it, and you shouldn't concern yourself with when or where I do it. I will deliver the best result I can. This, of course, is very disconcerting to a lot of management, because if I can't see you, then I think you're slacking. My answer to that is, if you don't trust your workforce, then you've hired the wrong people. Simple as that. But it is a very, very fundamental shift, because this is also linked to the other contentious issue, is the 4-day work week. So I'll give you my elevator pitch about why the 4-day work week is necessary and why not companies but countries around the world are implementing a 4-day work week. What we started to see just in 2022 is a whole list of companies doing trials, whether it is Spain, whether it's Ireland, the UK, Canada, America. South Africa is also entering its own 4-day work week trial in 2023. But my elevator pitch is really this. So the 40-hour work week was pioneered in the late 19th century. This was to give factory workers a break from working 80 hours a week and reduce that to 40 hours a week. The 5-day work week was pioneered by Ford Motors in the 1920s. This is, again, to stop factory workers working 7 days a week and give them a break and work only 5 days a week. This was sealed into a Labor Act in America in 1936. So for almost a century, we have been following this template that's been locked in America and used around the rest of the world to manage the productivity of factory workers. We're now in a digital age. We have knowledge workers, we have digital nomads, but yet we still use a completely outdated mode or an inappropriate mode of metrics and measurement to measure productivity. Something's got to give, and we're starting to see that it is starting to give. So the biggest challenge really is managers. How managers try and move from a location-centric mindset to a human-centric mindset. So stereotypically, and I must say stereotypically, the role or the persona of a manager was almost more male-dominated. You had to be assertive, you had to crack the whip, you had to get things done. Now we're looking for a much more feminine approach to management. It's about empathy, it's about nurturing. What a lot of HR practitioners don't like me saying is you have to, specifically in a younger workforce, is to mentor a career portfolio, not a career trajectory. That's old stuff. What we're starting to look at now is not project management, because most management was really about deadlines, projects, getting those things done and when you need to do them. That hasn't changed, but the way in which you do that has completely changed. So it's not about project management so much as people management. And the people management is going to get very, very complicated indeed. So for the first time, you have 4 very, very distinct generations to manage in a workforce. If you thought millennials were a bit of a handful, then you now have Gen Z coming into the workforce. I've been studying Gen Z for the past 8 years, long before they started to come of age. And I did this because I knew that this generation was going to be completely different. They are the first digital natives of humanity. They know no other world without Google, without smartphones, and without the internet. I say to parents and to teachers, I'm sorry for you, but you are no longer the font of wisdom. Google is the font of wisdom. It rewires the brain in a most dramatic way. You don't need a teacher to ask or prompt a Gen Z about a question, say, what is the distance between Earth and Mars? If they have a curious mind, all they'll do is Google it. So what does that do to that outlook of life and to see what their relationship to authority, to learning, to work? That's very, very different. So where people management comes in and where it gets really complicated is on the other end of the spectrum, you have an older workforce. This workforce is not going to want to retire either. So I look at a book by an author called Kevin Ditchwald, and he talks about life's third age. If you look at the 3 different ages that they're saying now, is that 0 or birth to 30, your formative years. 30 to 60, your career development and family development. Now you have 60 to 90, because it's not unusual in this day and age for people to turn 90. Perhaps a decade ago it was unheard of, but now more and more people are living longer and are not going to want to retire, because Why should you? You have cognitive ability and you are still very, very functional and useful to that institutional memory of that company. But each of these 4 generations, boomers, Gen X, millennials, and now Gen Z, all have totally different approaches to work, to authority, and rewards and benefits. But I want to go back to Gen Z because this is a really interesting one. In HR, they had somebody asking, so what is your dream job? And the blunt answer from a Gen Z was, I don't dream of work. Ouch. So what you're starting to see as well is the mantra was always, work is not a place I go to, work is what I do. The other mantra is, I don't want a job, I want a lifestyle. So ironically, we are seeing that that Gen Z mantra is what the rest of the world is starting to look at post-pandemic. We don't really just want a job, we want a lifestyle. Work is not a place I go to, but work is what I do. So we're starting to really come to that thinking. And essentially what we're seeing is a huge convergence of technology and purpose. So my question and challenge to companies watching this is, do you have a speak-up culture in your organization? What I mean about a speak-up culture is traditionally, I think hierarchical companies really did not look at your lower rung of workers for any opinions because I'm the boss and I'm senior management and I know better. We've moved into a completely different era now where you want to disrupt the status quo. And if you can't ask the difficult questions, you're not going to disrupt the status quo. And specifically with this young workforce who have agency, who have ideas, who are digital natives, why not ask them what to do about digital transformation, which most companies are struggling with at the moment anyway. So it's really a different era. It's no longer about my experience and what I know, but it's much rather about, are you asking the right questions? Because things need to be questioned. Systems, old systems specifically, are being washed away. So if you can't ask the new questions, then you are going to be washed away. So the best quote really has been, I'd rather have the questions that I can't answer than have answers that can't be questioned.